I think the difference is that you need to be very in these fast-growing companies. You need to be very flexible. You need to adapt. You need to be able to live with ambiguity and deal with it later on. Because the reality is they're not gonna wait for you, and they're not gonna stop. Like the business is never gonna stop.
Welcome back, everyone, to the PwC Brews podcast. Today, we're joined by Jorge Gallardo, global tax leader with over 15 years of experience spanning Europe, Americas, and Asia. Jorge has held leadership roles at PwC, EY, Fazz, and now serves as the global head of tax at Airwallex, overseeing tax strategy across more than 25 jurisdictions. In this episode, we'll explore his international career journey, the realities of building tax functions in hyper-growth fintech, and his perspective on the future of global tax and technology. Now, without further ado, let's bring him on and let's get the show on the road. Welcome, Jorge, to the podcast, PwC Brews. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me. All good. Doing well. Friday,
Yeah.
better day of the week before the weekend.
Yeah, exactly, right? Everything looks up for Friday, and you're calling in from Singapore, so this is our first guest going to be from that part of the world, from Asia Pacific.
Nice.
Yeah, so welcome aboard. Glad to have you. So Jorge, I'm really curious and interested because your background's really unique on how you came up. You went into public accounting, then you went in-house, but now you're working on this company that recently just crossed has been growing exponentially over the last years with Airwallex. So I'm really curious to dive deep into how that journey been, how you landed at these opportunities. So I'm curious, why don't you give me a little bit of background on what got you started in tax and why tax specifically?
So the reality is I went into law school with having in mind to be a lawyer, not a tax lawyer. Just I didn't know what kind of lawyer. And then I worked in a courthouse. I was a clerk in a courthouse. I didn't like that. I worked doing some family law litigation. I didn't like that either. I worked doing corporate law. Didn't like it. So I was like, okay, then what should I do? So, and I said, okay, this big four firms. They sound nice. Let's try it out. So I did an internship for about 6 months in PwC in Madrid. And that's when I just knew hey, I actually like this tax. I kind of know that this is what I want to do. So I started doing international tax those 6 months.
Yeah.
But I knew that if you want to do international taxes and planning, you need to do transfer pricing. You need to know transfer pricing. That's a basic that you need to know. And at least in my view, that's my idea. So then I changed. I did 2 years doing pure transfer pricing. Started from the beginning, transfer pricing analyst, doing benchmarks, doing transfer pricing studies, functional analysis, economic analysis, all these things. And just, it was a very nice start of the tax journey because it was when the APAs were booming. So I was in Mexico back then, and it was around 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
It was just the start of APAs and the maquiladora systems. So it was the kind of learning on the go what transfer pricing is, plus this new thing that they brought from Europe that it's called APAs. So it's a pretty good. It was a pretty good kind of learning curve. But I always had in my mind that I had to do this for a couple of years so that I have very good fundamentals on transfer pricing, so that I can do tax planning. So I knew that I wanted to do tax planning. So after that, I moved to Spain with PwC. I knew that, so I had an agreement with them that I would move to Spain. I would do an LLM in tax or a master's in tax while I was working with them, and join their international tax team. So I joined them there in Madrid, and that's how I kind of started my tax journey. And it brought me to I spent about 6-7 years in PwC in Spain. Moved to EY in Madrid also. Just different opportunity, kind of different role. And then decided with my wife at that point it was time to leave Spain. And we said, okay, let's go somewhere else. We didn't know where, and it was COVID. So we said, okay, let's just find a job. My wife does nothing to do with taxes. She's a food engineer. So I was like, okay, you find a good job in a cluster of cities that we said, okay, these are the cities that we would like to live in. Just find a job and I'll move within public accounting because it's much easier for me to move, right?
Yeah.
So she found a job in Singapore. We took a look, said that looks nice. PwC was willing to give me an opportunity in Singapore, and like, okay, let's move to Singapore. And that's how we came to Singapore.
And then what happened?
And then I spent 2 years in PwC in Singapore here. I at that point in time, so I had like probably almost like 10 years of experience in Big Four. I knew that I didn't want it to be a partner. I knew that it wasn't for me. Like I was tired of just giving advice and not making decisions and not actually implementing the advice, not seeing what's the fruits of the advice.
Yeah.
So I knew that I didn't want it to do that, but I knew that it was much easier to move countries with public accounting. So I kept going in PwC for a couple of years so I could know the market in Singapore, know the tax landscape, learn about it because it's much easier to learn it that way. And once I thought I had a very good fundamental in the Singapore system, to be completely honest, I think the Singapore system pretty easy. It's a copy paste between Hong Kong and the UK, a bit of the Netherlands, whatever is kind of the best ways. And it's a semi-territorial business, semi-territorial taxation system, so it's easy enough to kind of learn it. So once I thought, okay, I can do this, then I look for an in-house job that I wanted to go into to build something. So I went into my first tech company, which was a fintech, and I joined there as a head of tax. Spent, let's say, the first 6 months as a head of tax, but then took over the entire finance team. So I changed my role completely. I took over finance, FP&A, accounting, treasury.
And had you done any finance before?
No, I'd never done it. So the reality is that I joined the company, was going to it just secured a fundraise. It was all good. But then somehow the CFO left. They didn't have a plan to succeed anyone to take over the CFO.
Okay.
I was the most experienced. I was the most within the kind of minus ones from the CFO. I was the most experienced one, and I saw that no one was doing anything. Like no one was taking the job, and someone had to do something. And I was like, okay, if we don't do something about this, we're not going to continue to go well, right? So I just say, okay, I'll take over. I'll just start doing. I started dealing with the accounting first. Accounting is pretty natural. I think you work with accounting in tax. So I think, okay, just started dealing with the controllers and what's going on there. Then we had some treasury needs. Okay, let's just start taking a look at treasury. And eventually I just became the head of finance, which was good. I liked it. But also realized that I like tax better. That I like to do that. It's nice. Exactly. Like I think a lot of people in tax maybe have the idea that at some point they want to jump and be the CFO or be a broader scope. I did, and I realized I don't want that. So then when I realized that, it's like, okay, then I need to look for a much bigger company that's growing faster, but for a pure tax role, so that I can do like a lot more. So that's how I joined Airwallex. I came to Airwallex, which right at the time I was joining, we had a presence in 22 countries, I think, and now it's about 30. Expanding quickly and growing massively, and it was kind of to rebuild the tax function. So it was a very interesting and appealing opportunity, and I said, okay, let's go do it, and that's how I came to my current role. Been a year and a half, about 20 months in now.
And then at that point, so then you started negotiating and talking with the IRS, the IRAS, that version, the tax authorities in Singapore probably, and then the EDBs and all of that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, here, we have a lot of dealings with EDB for a couple of incentives or grants, or there's this thing called RIC, which is refundable investment credits. We're talking to IRS and a lot of things, and not only in Singapore, right? Like I think our presence is in a lot of countries. So we talk to the tax offices everywhere. We try to get either good deals or just kind of clarify whatever they like. They always, if you're in a position that you're making a lot of publicity about yourself, and we're in that position right now, like we're going a lot in marketing and spending a lot in brand, tax offices notice that. So you need to be a bit, I prefer to be a bit proactive and say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is our transfer pricing model. This is how we work, so that they're comfortable with it, rather than they see us growing so much and then they see our P&L and say, hey, this doesn't match what you're saying with what you're declaring. So I'm taking a bit more of a proactive approach. And yeah, I think
That's where you have
it's
the
the best way to
intercompany
do it.
agreements. You're structuring them in, making sure they're like in line, making sure in the quartile range, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean that's just the basics of it, right? Like you need to kind of have the full intercompany agreements, the full set of who's doing what, right? Like you need to have very, very clear view of what's the functional profile of what's the company, what each legal entity doing, right? And what's the value on the value chain for that entity, and therefore how do I remunerate that entity, right? Which are kind of concepts that if you're growing so fast as a company, you probably don't have so much clarity on that, and so you have to take a moment and say, okay, how are we actually doing things? Who should be our principal? Or do we have a bunch of principals? Do we have entrepreneurs? Do we have limited risk entities? This is how you get to that.
So I'm curious, in the beginning, you said that you wanted to you said if you wanted to do tax planning, you had to learn transfer pricing. And that's like an opinion I understand now as I've grown in my career. But in the beginning, nobody had actually told me that, right? When I was like a staff going into international tax, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do corporate tax and I'm going to do cross-border transaction work and I'm just going to do all of it. And transfer pricing is just this one thing these economists do on the side. And that's it. So like, how did you understand that so early on in your career? And then how was that phase going
I mean,
around learning?
because you have to think about that. It was the beginning of transfer pricing. It was when firms were rolling out their teams. Like it was very new to everyone. But I think if you took a deep look about it, it was okay. What are they trying to do? Actually, what they're trying to do is to avoid companies shifting profits to other companies, right? They're trying to avoid like what BEPS did in 2015, but they were like was the first part of BEPS, if you want to call it, right? Like it's just saying that you have to do the same as third parties would do. So then, if that was going to grow, and it was clear that countries were committed to do transfer pricing, and the OECD was pushing for it, it's like then our tax planning that we're doing today, and that we just move boxes around and shift dividends, profits, interest, that's not going to work in some years, right? Like if you really understand the concept of transfer pricing at that point. So I don't know. I think it was just probably luck that I read a lot about OECD and I kind of got very immersed on how at that point Spain, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, like they were implementing their transfer pricing regimes. So I just kind of thought, I think this is the way to go. I wasn't sure. But it was a gut feeling like, hey, I think I need to know transfer pricing because this is the only way to plan later on. I don't think moving boxes, because at that point we were doing holding companies everywhere and sandwich structures and all these things. And it was boxes. And that doesn't work anymore, right? Like, I thought that it was the beginning of the end of that. And you couldn't say it because, for example, I was working in a team that was doing this ETBE regime in Spain that it's kind of very famous. It's just pure holding companies, and you put two of them and then everything goes tax free and things like that. Like, yeah, it was nice regimes, but it wasn't sustainable. And as soon as you see that someone is taking a look at what's the functional profile of the entities, then it's very different. Yeah. So I understood that, and I had a feeling like that's where things are going to go. So I thought, okay, I better learn this early rather than later that it's a much more developed thing.
So then who was like, in that sense, it's like basically it's like startup culture all over again when you're doing transfer pricing, right? Small teams, everybody's rolling it out. Not much is known, especially like if you're in Mexico, especially with Maquiladora, it was like a big thing to bring in a lot of manufacturing in Mexico. So like, who were like some of the people that you worked with? Who was like your basically your role model or your mentor?
Yeah, so I think I was very lucky that I have a couple partners and a couple directors in PwC in Mexico that they were very, very into these regimes already, and they were the only ones doing it in Mexico. And I was lucky enough to just land in their team by luck. To be honest, like I didn't know them for anything, so I just started working with them. And at that point in time, it was a moment that no one wanted to do this still. Like the transfer pricing team was maybe 7 persons for Mexico in PwC, or 10 persons maybe. So if you had someone that was cheap, because I was just a fresh grad, cheap, that wants to do this and it's going to work his ass off and work a bunch of hours, they would just take me. So I just took advantage of it and then started working with them. and learned a lot. I think it was basic for my career, like to do that, because first, like I don't think you can actually work with transfer pricing if you haven't done benchmarks, if you haven't understood how the functional analysis is actually done. It's not just a paper, right? Like you have to go and interview a bunch of people and ask the right questions, and not ask them not take their answers for what they think they should answer, but actually like go deeper and see what actually are you doing? Does it match what you're saying? And at that point, because it was all new and we were just kind of testing things, it was pretty interesting.
So interesting. So you did that. You moved over. So then you became senior manager. At what point did you realize, like, I don't want to be a partner? Like, well, everybody has that realization. Mine was 2 to 3 years in, and I'm like, can't do it.
No, I was much more deep in. I was a senior manager.
Yeah.
I remember exactly the moment I realized. I was in Madrid. There was this kind of global PwC event.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was EY event. I mean, it's the same but different colors. This global event, and we were at a dinner that it was kind of the leader of each country, the tax leader for each country, just in that table. And I was there because I was kind of organizing the event, and I was seeing them, and they were all either traveling all the time, divorced, working all the time, not seeing their kids. Like I saw the outcome, and I was like, I don't really like that. I don't want that for me. Like and I saw that anytime we were having dinner, right? And anytime that a client would call, they just step out and go. And it's like, I don't want to be like that my entire life. Like, I don't want to have to do that every single day of my life. So at that point, I said, I remember perfectly. I went home back to my wife and I said, like, hey, I want to quit. And she was like, no, what? No. And she was like, did you have a bit much to drink? And I was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. But then we had a plan, right? We wanted to move, and to said, okay, I know I don't want to be here. I'm good at what I'm doing. I'll just continue to do it until I find a good opportunity. And it's what I did.
Okay. So then you did the transition. And then, so then you go in, I'm like curious. So you go in, do finance, and that's like, I would say that's most people's tax professionals kind of dream. They're like always seeing like, what's on the other side? I want to do finance, right? And because people think finance is cool and tax is just like a little there. Just putting up numbers on like a tax return times about 21%, calling it a day. But people are like, so what was, 2 questions. What was that like? Who trained you, or like who was your mentor when you were doing finance? And then secondly, what made you realize that you actually like tax? What was in that role that you like really appreciate going back to tax?
I mean, unfortunately, I didn't. Maybe if I had a mentor, I would like it more. I didn't have any mentor. I was by myself there. It was kind of survival mode.
Okay.
So I had to make mistakes and learn from them. So I think I worked very closely with the auditors to kind of understand what they actually need, and therefore I could translate that from a finance and accounting perspective. So it was kind of backwards. So you shouldn't do it that way, but I just had to learn on the fly. So I think it was just learning process. It was a smaller tech company, so it's very still kind of, you can wear a lot of hats at the same time. So I'm sure I wouldn't have that opportunity in a bigger company, but at that stage it was a Series C company, growing a lot, but still kind of Series C is young. So I was just learning on the fly. I have very good colleagues that they were supportive. Like they didn't want to take the responsibility, but they could help. And they would teach me about treasury. They would teach me about FP&A and budgeting. They would teach me so I relied on them, to learn, and I entrusted them that I thought they were doing things well. And I kind of, to be honest, I think I had to study a lot. I spent a lot of nights just, okay, how am I doing this if I'm doing a year's planned budget and then I have to land in X amount of EBITDA, how am I do it? Because it's not just a top-down number, right? It has to make sense with the business, and you have to go speak to the business and make sure it makes sense from their perspective, that you're going to hit this amount of gross profit and that the commissions are not going to impact, and that all these things, right? So I just had to learn a lot, and it was fun. But I realized that I was not doing tax. Like I was doing tax. Maybe I had to hire someone to be to lead the tax team. because
Okay.
I didn't have the time. And then I was spending maybe 10% of my time with this person because he was a good person, a very good person, because I knew him from before. So I knew he was taking care of tax. So I was spending most of my time doing other things that I started to miss tax. I was like, hey, what I actually like is like this planning, this transfer pricing, these things, and I'm not even doing anything about it. I'm just agreeing with my new tax senior manager that it's proposing ideas. So that's when I realized, hey, maybe I don't really want to be doing finance. I don't want to be doing the full set of things. I want to go back, maybe a bigger scale, but go back.
Yeah. And now you're leading head of tax at Airwallex, which is like a fintech company, pretty fast growing. What skill sets do you think like you have learned that have like benefited you most right now in this role at this company right now, and especially throughout your career?
I think no one can be head of tax without a good technical basis, right? Like I think that's the base. Like if you don't have very good tax fundamentals, you can't do it. And that's just the truth, right? Like if you don't know your basics and you haven't done it for a while and learned from experience, you can't do it. But apart from that, I think the difference is that you need to be very in these fast growing companies, you need to be very flexible. You need to adapt. You need to be able to live with ambiguity and deal with it later on. Because the reality is they're not going to wait for you and they're not going to stop. Like the business is never going to stop. You have to figure out it in the fly. And then you have to live with some things that you are able to solve, some things that you will solve in 6 months, some things that they're not material enough for you to solve, and you'll put it in a drawer, and at some point, if you have time, go there. But that's something that, from a tax perspective, if you're a pure tax guy, you don't like it. You like it's kind of, you have to learn to be a lot more flexible and just adapt to the situations.
Yeah. And then is that something like you saw from like your previous company at Buzz, or is that something you had to like, because like that was, because it's in my experience, public accounting, you're like given this structure, right? There's layers of review that go through everything. We tidy it up, put on a bow tie, and give the opinion to the client. Or here you're trying to make probably a decision a day, and you're like moving because your company is like, oh, we're gonna open up operations in country X today. What do we need to know about it? And you're like, okay, this is what we need to do.
Yeah, I think the public accounting mindset is good because you have the ideal scenario of what it should be at some point. But definitely working my previous role, that's what made me successful right now at Airwallex. If I hadn't had any startup slash fast growing experience, I wouldn't be able to do this job, because you need to learn to actually make decisions. You need to learn to actually live with them, right? And to move fast, to adapt, like to what I was just saying, like you're not going to fix everything. And if you see it from a pure tax advisor's perspective, well, this is my advice. This is the way you should do it. The law is interpreted in this way, and that's it. And the reality is that it's not black and white. That you can, and there's a path to go to reach the good position, right? It's not that you snap your fingers and it's, oh, everything is solved, and now I'm compliant with participation exemption, and I can receive my dividends, right? Like it's not like that. It's you have to work on it. So it's from passing it from the paper to practice is hard. And if you don't have a smaller role or a smaller like if you haven't done it ever, you have to learn it. So I learned it in my previous company, in my first tech company, right? Like I learned it there. I learned to be scrappy. I learned to kind of make decisions fast and then fix whatever I knew that it needs to be fixed, but the decision was made. So it's something that you have to learn. And I don't think that you can learn that in public accounting.
So yeah, that's like a really good point. So because most of the time you think like when we're in public accounting, we think of the client and we're like, okay, if I go in-house, my life would be so much easier from like public accounting, because I can just reach out these consultants and they can like do my compliance, do my provision work, do my planning work, and I just get and consolidate, and I'm just a middleman in between all of that. But it's like a lot different because you are at the end, there's a lot more pressure on you to make the right decision in those moments. And you have to live with those decisions because you see them getting implemented right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you have that shock like as you moved from public accounting, or do you knew what you were getting into?
I think I was ready for it. I can't say that I definitely knew because I haven't done it before, but I had a very good idea that I needed to start making decisions on myself. I wanted to be held accountable for my advice and for what I'm saying, for my technical positions, right? Or for everything. Like, I was tired of just, this is your risk. These are my caveats. Go and live with it. I was tired of that. So I think I embraced it pretty easily. But yeah, as you say, like, it comes with a lot of pressure. It comes with a lot of different stakeholder management. Is very different. Like, when you're an advisor, you talk to your tax guys. Maybe someone, if it's a very big transaction, you talk to the CFO, but it's about tax and that's it. Here is, you're talking to everyone else. No one else is tax. Like, if you're the head of tax, you're the ultimate, like the last person that cares about tax. No one else really cares from the technical perspective about tax. They care about the outcome. So then it's a very different set of conversation that you need to have, right? It's all about how do we reach the outcome that we want, and then we fundamentally protect it from a technical basis, right? So yeah, I think it's very different. I think I wouldn't say it's harder or easier one than the other, right? Because I think for me, I think it's harder to be just on call for clients 24/7. I don't want to do that. That's the part I didn't like. I love doing the work. I didn't like the client management side. So for me, that's harder because I don't like it. I love it. I don't care having to talk to everyone in the business and having to convince my chief legal officer or my chief revenue officer that we need to change our pricing or we need to do X, Y, and Z because I love it. That's what I like. So for me, it's easier, but it's just a different perspective. I think there's people in public accounting that can come over and do it well. Yeah. But there's a lot of advisors that, and to be honest, I've had them in my teams in some points. Like, there's people that cannot adapt to stop being an advisor and actually do the thing and make the decisions and take the risk yourself. Like, you cannot caveat your advice.
Yeah, you can't say. Right? Like, it depends,
right? Based on these assumptions, this is what I'm saying. No, man. Like, what's the answer?
Get to the point, right? So, how many people in your team right now? In time,
right now we have about 5 and hiring a couple more. Okay. So the way we structure it, we have regional teams. So I have 3 senior managers, one in APAC, one in EMEA, one in San Francisco doing Americas. Then we have an indirect tax person, and then we're hiring for a couple more roles, one transfer pricing / kind of global projects, and a couple more junior roles to support my regional teams.
And then what has been like in these, like, so you're probably a remote first kind of like, if you guys are all spread apart, how do you like build that team and like culture? Like, what has been like your go-to? Any leadership theories you rely upon, or what's your motto?
I think I try to be as normal and honest and available as possible, just like a normal person. Yeah. I just try to, like, I've always, to be honest, I think since I was in Big Four, I've always been kind of the people manager for the teams, and I've always kind of, I was teaching for years also in university. Like, I like to grow people and to mentor people. So I think it comes naturally for me. So I just do what I consider normal, which is talking to people, letting them know what's the expectations, helping, giving them the tools. Like, I have very high expectations, but I need to give them the right set of tools for that, right? I cannot have high expectations and don't give them anything, right? Like, I need to give them the tools and prepare them so that they can deliver. And I also was very careful on the type of people I hired. I think hiring is crucial. I think you need to be ready to be an individual contributor first and then a manager. At any job, at any level, you have to be able to do things and do it yourself. You cannot just rely on, I'll get it, I'll review it. That's like, if you're in a public accounting and you're a senior manager and you're a director, you're already used to that, right? Like, you just get everything done and then you review, comment, present it to a client. That doesn't work. Like, you need to do things. You need to figure out, and if someone is out, it's not like you can wait. You have to go and do it and solve it, right? So I was very careful on the kind of people that I'm hiring, that they're like me, like they like doing things, and they have the things that they do themselves, the things that they do with me, the things that they have support from either third parties or contractors or whatever system we use to support. It's like an equilibrium of everything, right? And so the hiring is crucial. I think you need to hire the right people for the team that you're trying to build, and that has to fit with the company's culture, right? I can set a kind of culture for my team, but it can't be against the company culture. Like you can't fight that, right? So it has to fit nicely.
Correct. And then, so how do you identify if someone's going to be like a good individual contributor? Like, do you have any traits that you look for when you're going
Yeah,
through that?
I think you need to, like, it's very very hard to interview people and get this kind of sense, right? So
Mhm.
what I do is just ask for very specific examples of how they solve problems, and that is very evident if they solve problems by asking people to solve things and then just getting it and reviewing it, or rather than I say, no, I took it over, I went to the client's office, I did this, it's very different how you actually solve the problem, right? And so I try to dig deep into that and dive into that, like try to just get very practical answers and very concrete examples on how you solve problems, or how do you react in unforeseen situations, and how do you react when you have to just think on your feet. What do you do? Like, are you actually capable of resolving it yourself? Do you need support? What do you need? I think it's not that easy, to be honest. I think we all make mistakes. We can have bad hires, and it doesn't mean they're bad persons, right? It's just not a fit. Um, but at least you know what traits are you trying to get. Like, persons that actually get super hands on. They just want to solve problems. They take ownership of everything. Like, they're not gonna say this is an accounting problem, this is a treasury problem. No, they have to own things. They are able to work independently. They don't need to be micromanaged or supervised all the time, because it doesn't work in this kind of like in a massive company that's growing so fast. You don't have time to be holding hands. So it's a certain kind of traits that if you see it, then that's what I look for.
And then, so that's like brings up an interesting point because I feel like the job and the profession is changing, where instead of being like managers, now almost everyone, doesn't matter if you're in public accounting or in private, I think everybody has to become an individual contributor at some point now. Teams are going to be much more leaner. We're going to have AI like assist us with like our task, and people are going to like switch that work. So like if you're graduating out of college, what would you like advise someone? Be like, hey, how do you set yourself up for success throughout your career now? Because yeah, the old model is gone. When you live in a new world now.
I think there's two things. The first one is, everyone, when they want to go into tax, they don't want to do compliance. It's very obvious now that no one wants to do compliance. And compliance is the basics. Like, you need to know how to do compliance, because that's just the basic fundamental how everything else works. So
Yeah.
my first advice is, don't be afraid of doing compliance. You don't want to do that or your life, and you don't only want to do that. We all know that we don't want to, but you have to know how to do it, and you have to know how it works so that you can do something else. That's the first one. And the second one is, yes, you have to be an individual contributor, but you have to learn to use technology. What you say is very, very, very true, right? Like, our teams are much leaner. Like, you couldn't imagine, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you wouldn't imagine a tax team of 5 persons covering more than 80 entities, more than 30 countries. Right? That's how we're doing it, and we're doing it pretty good.
Yeah.
We just need to automate things. We just need to use technology. We need to use AI. AI is here, and it's not going anywhere, right? Like, you need to learn how to do it. And I'm not saying I'm a master of AI, of course not, but every day I spend some time trying to do some agents, trying to do some things that I can automate myself, and then ask for opinions from other persons. How would you do this? Does it work? Because yes, we need to be individual contributors, but we need to get the help, the support from whatever technology tools we have, so that we can do more strategic things. I don't think AI is going to replace us. We always have to make decisions and plan and take. There's something that it's very valuable, which is the experience. Like, AI can learn from the information,
Yeah.
but they make assumptions about the mistakes, and they kind of not quantify, but they make some rules and parameters of why did this failed. And the reality is, sometimes things just happen. You just learn that there's another person in the other side, and that's why it failed. There's a tax office inspector that is just very unreasonable, and you can't change that, right? Like, there's this human factor that's always going to be there, that you need. So if you put that together with information and the qualitative data, then you can make much better decisions. So that's the part that you need to work on, because everything that it's automatable, it's going to be like, we have at Airwallex, we have a KPI to automate everything, like at least 35% of our workflows by the end of the year. you need to do it. It's here to stay. Like, it's not like, yeah, it's another thing. It's just going to go away. No. And the reality is pretty useful. If you learn how to do it, people use it different ways. It's pretty useful. And it makes my life easier.
What's been your like favorite use case so far now that you've seen of AI?
So I spent like a couple of weeks trying to build an agent that reviews transfer pricing documentation.
Okay.
And now it's working.
Okay.
So basically, I mean, it's not one agent. It's like 4 different agents all together. And
Mhm.
but what you do is you input your transfer pricing documentation. It
Okay.
goes and reviews against the last year to be consistency, and anything that is weird against the OECD parameters. Then the economic analysis, if it's right. Then the functional analysis against what we actually do with the company, because AI, like, if we have a couple AI tools that we use ourselves, and most of our information is there from a company perspective, right? So they can go and see if that's true or not. So this is massive workflow agent that gives you a very good view. Okay, these are the things that don't match the description. These things are exactly the same as last year.
Yeah.
The range is off. So that, imagine you have to review, I don't know, 35 local files, and you can have a first review by an agent rather than someone else. Someone else has, or myself. Like the last 2 years, I've done it myself. Everything. I can use my time in something else, and then just have a first layer of review and go into, okay, this is what it doesn't work, this is what works. And we cannot trust AI. Like, we have to challenge it also, right? Because it can hallucinate, it can give false results. Like, you have to prove everything also. Like, I don't trust it. Like, my views, I don't trust AI, but I use it so that I can challenge it, and it works.
It's like it's simply as like talking to another like person on your team, right? They give you something to review, and then you have to see like what assumptions they made and then see how they got to their endpoint. Obviously, AI like learns a lot faster right now. It's like you can set the parameters and it can do a really good job. But like, yeah, at your level, you're the decision maker, and it falls upon you if something breaks.
Yeah, exactly. I think I see it as an associate. I just have to I just have to teach them, give them very specific instructions. This is what I want. This is what I don't need. Don't go through these couple traps. Give me
Yeah.
an outcome. This is the specific outcome. What I've learned is that I have to ask for very specific outcomes. Like, this is what I want to get. Keep that in mind, because if you go somewhere else, I don't want to get that. And yeah, I mean, it's error and trial.
And then what do you think is like gonna happen with cross-border taxation now? We had Pillar 2. Pillar 2 is here. It's rolled out certain jurisdictions. I don't know if it's gonna stay or not, because it's still like in that phase. The US doesn't have any adoption. We had like Superbead almost get implemented, but that got taken away. So what do you think is gonna happen with cross-border taxation? And like, do you think we're gonna have then Pillar 3 come in with updates?
No, I mean, the reality is, I don't know what's going to happen. I can give you my gut feeling, but I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I think Pillar 2 is here. It's going to stay in some form, but it's going to mutate a lot. Like, it's already mutated a lot, right? Since what they wanted in the first place is much different what they want right now. And it's very mingled with political reasons, right? And political outcomes that they want to get. So that's why it's very hard. I don't know. We'll get some kind of P2. Yeah, sure. I think every country already has some kind of minimum threshold for taxation, right? So it's fine. I don't think it's going to change our lives in the way we do intercompany or transactions. I think it's a massive compliance burden. That's for sure. And it's very clear that the OECD doesn't really care about your compliance burden. They just want some information, right? And they didn't think this through on how am I going to implement it. Like, it's crazy. Like, if you're a multinational company but growing so fast, I have a team of 5. You want me to do all these things? No, like, it's crazy.
Like, it
That's
doesn't
the
help
reality.
you.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, and they don't care. It's like, yeah, now you need to do it. So we're gonna have to do it some way.
Just find you. Yeah.
Exactly. We're gonna have to do it some way. I think the reality is that it's gonna end up being like CBCR report right now. Like, it started CBCR when CBCR launched. I don't know. I don't remember what year it was, but I don't know, like maybe 7 years ago or something. I don't remember exactly when it was, but we all thought, what are they going to do with this information? They're going to triangulate everything. We need to be very careful on what we put. And nowadays it's another compliance form. Just fill it out and file it. I think Pillar 2 is going to end up being that, just more compliance, but it's going to take a while until we get there. And it's harder because CCR, everyone implemented the same. It was pretty standard. Like, this is a set of information you need. We're going to exchange it. By the end of the year, you need to tell me who's going to do it. And that's it. Here's different because countries are going to protect their tax bases, right? They're not going to let someone else tax their benefits.
Correct.
So everyone is covering their revenue for saying it in some way.
Yeah, every country
and
has
then there's going to
be
be mismatches.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't think they thought it through.
That's really interesting. So as like we always get to like the end of like the episode, I always like to ask my guests like, what's your plan after tax? Like if your retirement comes up or like your career post tax. Everybody has some idea. Have you thought about it, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, I think I have a very clear idea. I think I want to go into helping people who are in debt, people or small companies that are in debt, restructure debt, and get them kind of to if it's a company, and to just make some money to save your business or close it down if you have to close it down, or people, and just kind of helping them figure their way out of debt and financial uncertainty. I think we have a very, very big gap on financial education. I don't think no one teaches you finance in school, right? Like basic things of how can you use a credit card? How can you get debt? Is it good?
Yeah.
Like debt to income ratio, like these kind of very basic things that no one teaches you.
Yeah.
I think we have a massive gap, and that no one's doing anything about it. Like there's a bunch of books, podcasts, things like that, but no one is actually helping people. So I would like to just go and try to help someone, probably in Mexico, I guess. It's easier, and I think we have a massive gap in Mexico. So I would probably do that. I don't know when that's going to be.
That's so interesting. What was the motivation behind it? Like, was it life experience or something you just saw, or just like what brought? That's like different, right? Yeah.
To be honest, I just like to solve problems, and I think it's a massive problem. I think it's a massive problem that our society has, that a lot of people live above their means because they have to, because that's what we teach them, and that's what the society pushes you to, and you don't know how to get out of it, and no one's telling you how to get out of it. No one's telling you that you shouldn't have 150K of debt in your credit cards. No one's telling you that, right? Like they're just giving you another credit card so you can use the other one. So I think there's especially in let's call it a bit less developed countries, it's even worse because people are using this for not for buying things, but for buying food and for buying like. So I wanna help people like that way. Like I think it's a very easy thing to do if you know about it, and I've learned a lot about it just from my personal finance journey, that I can help people, and I can solve these problems because I am motivated by solving problems. I like to solve problems. It's not like I probably won't get paid for that. They don't have money, right? But it's just like I like solving problems, and I think it's a massive problem that our generation and the future generations have.
So we could see you on a podcast hosting your own financial literacy podcast.
I don't think I would go and do it in practice. I wouldn't do a podcast. I would just try to actually help, like, because I've seen a bunch of these podcasts that they try to help people, but then I think doing it publicly first it's much harder for people. Like bringing your finance. If you're in trouble, imagine you're in trouble. The last thing you want to do is do it publicly, right? And I think then probably especially in Mexico, still it's a bit of a taboo, like talking about finance. So I don't think if I wanna help people in Mexico, I don't think they're gonna, like, a couple of them, they would go into a podcast, but I don't think that's I wouldn't get a big push for that. So I would just open a small office and try to see people who's them that have trouble and just help them. Like, or go and get, I don't know, go to big stores and say, who's your biggest debtors? Let's just talk to them and see how we can help them. And you get paid as a company, and I help them to restructure their things, right? Because you can't imagine that, like, imagine people having tons of debt towards the supermarkets or towards like very basic goods. Like, this is a huge problem that no one talks about.
And that's like the world, as it gets more and more into debt as like every year rolls along, right? That if you see debt levels, they've like increased exponentially, and they're gonna keep increasing. There's just no way, right? To on the other side, but just agreed. Debt can be good. Companies take on debt when they want to like do R&D and do product launches, but then there's other kinds of debt which are not good debt.
It's very different. I'm not saying debt is bad. I have debt, but I think it's profitable if you know how to use it. If you can be leveraged, but you need to know that it comes with a risk. But that, I think one of the points that no one teaches you is that you can be a lot more profitable with debt, but it has a risk component, and no one takes into account that risk. What happens if you stop getting income? You can't get your debt paid. Like, that's the component that your IRR is not going to get, right? Like, you just get the returns, but where's the risk?
Yeah, sounds like you learned a lot from like actually your finance time at Fazz then.
Yeah, it was fun. Yes.
Okay, that's like actually really inspiring. I love the motivation behind it. I think that you'll do great stuff, and I feel like that's what tax accountants mostly are, or tax lawyers, or tax accountants, anyone's in tax. They're just problem solvers, right? It's always you work in the gray, and there's not always a good answer. Like not a straightforward answer. I wouldn't say a good answer, but a straightforward. And you have to do a lot of nuances to make your best judgment and to get there.
Yeah, I agree that I think there's never one answer. And that's the thing, right? Like, there's multiple answers. There's the best answer, but sometimes you cannot get to that, right? Like, you have to be able to get let's say from a practical standpoint, you need to be able to get there. And so you just solve whatever you have in front of you and go to the next problem.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Well, this has been great. I learned a lot. The audience will, when they hear, they'll learn a lot too. But thank you so much for giving us your time.
No, thank you for having me. It was pretty interesting. Yeah, that's pretty good.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, Bruce.